Hello and welcome to ProLab Studios. My name is Michael Gallion. I am the Vice President of Business Development here at Bird Barrier. We're at ProLab today to do another episode of Modern Bird Control Podcast. And we're with none other than Scott Swanson, our latest member of the Bird Barrier team. Not new to bird control. He's been at it a lot longer than I am. So
29 years.
How many years? 29.
29, yeah.
So almost, you're just a few years shy of the length of our company, which has been around for over 30 years. So we're really glad to have you on board. We're glad that you're here to shed some light from another viewpoint. In particular, what Scott is going to offer today is a very unique insight that probably no one else in the world of professional bird control currently can offer from product, supplier, and strategy viewpoint. Bird Barrier is not the only one out there, but we position ourselves to be the leader of the technology and all of the devices and strategy. But what makes Scott really unique in this situation is that he was working for a competitor of Bird Barrier for many, many years, and then went away to do a very specific study of what it's like to run a bird control program.
I thought it would be a great idea, get out from behind the desk and into the field. So
there's no better way to learn about what it's really like on the other side of the table to actually become the person on the other side of the formula for what we do. So that's what today is about. Scott's going to talk about running a bird control program and the lessons learned. How long were you in operation for?
3 years.
3 years, which is plenty of time to really know what the challenges really are all about. And that's what we're going to do is we're going to kind of format this to take you through the process. I'm going to just ask Scott a lot of questions because we haven't really sat down and had this conversation. And I know that this is going to be valuable. I couldn't wait to get this podcast up and share this information. So we're going to just dive right into it. We're going to start with the fact that you had made this firm decision to start your own business, do bird control. You have all these years going into it, so you have definitely a huge advantage. You know where to get all your supplies from. You have all these sources. You know what all the devices are that need to be used. So in that way, you're not like a newcomer to bird control, which is really important to understand. If you're brand new to bird control, you probably want to at least get, some years of experience doing that out in the field first. That probably is one of the most important parts, right? Just knowing the product lines, right?
Yeah, I found out very quickly that even though I had been in the industry on the manufacturing side for many, many years, there was a whole world out there that I was unaware of. And you learn certain things when you're up on a lift, or you're climbing up a ladder, a 26-foot ladder, that you just really can't relate to, or you have a harder time relating to it when you're sitting behind a desk in an office selling bird spike.
Right, so part of it was the world outside of the company that you worked for. There were a lot more strategies possible for you to use, or was it just things about the world of customers on that side, like dealing with customers? Was that one of the bigger differences?
Well, there are a lot of differences.
Okay. So
and I failed an awful lot, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it. I'm happy to share some of my failures.
Yeah, those are what you learn from, right? There's a saying, there's a seed of opportunity in every failure, and it's up to you to plant that, to use it to your advantage. And that sometimes people have failures and they just don't turn it into some kind of future action. But let's take you through the whole process. You've made this decision now to go out on your own, and part of this affected your family, your wife, and the family members. Your wife, was she fully supportive of this?
Completely.
Going into it?
Looking back, that was probably the greatest benefit of doing this on my own. Was I did have the support of my family. I was afforded an opportunity to spend more time with them because my time was my own.
Right, okay.
So if I could squeeze a job in and take a Wednesday afternoon to go see my kid play golf or whatever it may be, go to
Yeah.
the lake and go fish, I could do that.
Well, that's a huge advantage as well. I mean, a lot of times we think about starting a business, there's a 3-year period before you become profitable. It's a general rule of thumb. And you can burn up a lot of hours of quality time with your family. So
Yeah.
that's probably one of the important lessons, but that's something that sounds like you did right. You communicated well in the outset, because sometimes that's a factor. Is if your home life is not fully supportive, it can actually undermine what you're trying to do if you're going to launch a business of your own.
And that really was one of the primary goals when I started my own thing, because I had been,
Better work-life balance.
totally, 100%.
So the flexibility. So one advantage is flexibility. You can deal with your business working kind of around priorities that happen with your wife and kids in
100%.
that situation.
100%.
That's one nice thing about bird work. A lot of times installs are done in the evenings or in odd hours when businesses aren't operating, so it affords you some differences with the schedule. Let's take it from the very first step, though. You got this business, you named it, you come up with a name of
Yeah.
your company, and then when I think of a company getting started, there has to be the marketing in place. So in other words, the image of the company, online presence, everything, if possible, social media, all this stuff comes into play right away. If you go into business, you want to look the part, you have to dress for success from a marketing viewpoint. So did you hire a marketing company? Did you have a friend that could help
One of
you
my
with
failures.
logos?
That was one of my,
Okay.
that
Yeah.
was definitely one. So when I went into it, and obviously my wife was a big part of it, I wanted to do it right.
Right,
I wanted to play by the rules, never been a real rule breaker. I know there's some guys that go and buy a ladder and a truck and just start throwing it up. So there was all the stuff I didn't think about, which was insurance, name registration, trademark logos, tax, all the stuff that I didn't know that I kind of had to wade
Yeah.
through. And with that in mind, keeping in mind that I did want to play by the rules and I did want to do everything right, my learning curve was pretty steep.
Okay.
So I don't think I really did any bird work for me the first 6 months. It was,
Right,
getting
okay.
everything off the ground.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's one. There's one of the lessons right there. And you're not alone. Like when I see companies go out there and get going, it's hard to believe in this day and age that companies try to launch without a website, without at least some basic marketing. So I think one of the first lessons is there are companies out there that really offer some inexpensive starter packages for a basic website. In the world of bird control, just a single page, a single cover page with some additional ability to add links is absolutely better than nothing. And having it professional looking with that logo and some basic business cards, even though most people transfer information electronically, you have to have the basics. And to put that in place first is one of the most important ones, I would say, from experience. If you're going to go out and bid on jobs and compete with everyone else in the marketplace, then you have to look that part.
That's the first thing I did was, and actually I recruited my 20-something son, to build the website.
Yep.
So I got that far.
Yeah. So
And it was good, and we got a name. Some of my old customers actually helped me create the name.
yeah, you got a lot of friends around
lot of
you. Yeah,
friends.
that's a good thing.
And-
That's another good thing about it is usually in the mix, if you've been in business for a while, there are a lot of people out there you should reach out to. And
So that was one of my other failures. Is I tried to go it alone, right? I'm a
be
man.
solo.
I can do it. I can
Oh,
get
okay.
stuff done. I can
Yeah.
solve all the problems I need. I don't need anybody. I should have looked for more help. I should
Yeah.
have been out there asking my friends. I should have called you. Actually, if I was
Yeah.
really smart,
Yeah.
I would have called and said, "Hey, Michael, this is. What do you think?"
Yeah.
But that was, and we can talk some more about that because I had some installations, some service side issues that were based on me not getting somebody I could trust to actually help with the installation point. That was a whole nother story. I mean, that was...
Right. Okay. Well, before we jump into the actual, when you went out into the world, you started installing jobs. There are a few more things about the marketing. I'm curious. Your son got the site up and running, and what about search engine optimization? Was there any effort put into that? And then were you able to get any leads that came in organically through whatever marketing you had?
Yeah, no, I was terrible at that. And again, trying to do everything on my own.
Yeah.
Or with family who didn't know anything really about anything.
Right. Okay.
That was something that before I knew it, 3 years had gone by, and it's like, oh man, I didn't even, investigate the whole, website search engine stuff.
Yeah, see, and this is a thing that I notice also in the world of pest operators. Pest operators represent the majority of people that actually go into bird control. But when they make that leap, let's say they've worked for, a big brand pest operation, maybe a national or even global brand, and there's plenty of those. At some point they decide as a pest operator they found this little niche, they do a lot of bird work, and they say, man, I can do this. I'm going to go do this on my own. And the thing that they don't expect is that leads will somehow continue to come their way. They're actually lulled into this sort of complacency because the big global brands, they put so much into lead generation, search engine optimization. So there's this constant stream of lead opportunities, and they get to pick and choose the most profitable ones and focus on those. And now, all of a sudden, their leads are going to just purely come from word of mouth, people, that you talk to say, I've started my own business. But, man, to get the leads to come to you, it takes a lot of prep work.
Well, those guys find you, too, though. I remember, as soon as I had put the website up and I registered my business name, and my email address got out there, I was getting solicited from all those companies.
Yeah, so that built on your professional reputation before you started your business.
Well, yeah, but one of the things I found was that a lot of those services are very expensive.
Yeah.
And for a guy just starting out with very little capital, I didn't have the luxury of having somebody to back me, so it was all out of my savings and cashed out 401ks and did all sorts of stuff to create the business.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of money, a big budget for that type of service, unfortunately.
Right.
But so I had to do it the old school way, right? You go to meetings, you go and you knock on doors, you go talk to property managers, you go to community events. I mean, old school stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
But once the business started coming in and I actually had to get up on the ladder, I neglected that part.
Right. So there's an important lesson right there is, when you have a business that's getting off the ground, a disproportionate amount of your efforts has to be in lead and sales generation. Sales is the bloodline. I've worked for different companies over the years, and one president of a company I worked for, his famous saying was, sales cures all. And it's like whenever the business had any kind of problem, he'd say, we got to sell more. That way we're able to solve the problems. But then when you're the main salesperson, which is your forte, this is another thing you got to look at, is being really good with relational interchanges for developing business, being a good in-person person. Some people are really good in person. Mm-hmm. In this day and age, more than ever, like here we are reaching audiences out just through Zoom or through virtual means, but to be in person, it's a lost art, but it's really needed now more than ever because things are really critical in terms of trust. There's a lot of people in the world of bird control that really don't have the professional acumen. Mm-hmm. And it really becomes clear, and you really want to sit down before you spend a lot of money. So this is your forte. You're really good with sales, And spending most of your time focusing on that sales is probably the most important thing. But then you develop the sales, you start getting leads, the jobs have to be executed, and you're one person.
Right.
This
right.
is the lesson right here. I mean, this is the crux of it. I get this a lot.
Me too, yeah.
I get this when I have guys, they take off, they're off to the races. There's always this big burst, and then there's this curve that starts to slow down, and they're trying to juggle way too many balls. And the ones that they can't drop are sales, marketing, lead generation. Is that what happened?
Yeah, and you don't have to be great at sales. You know, I spent a lot of years helping guys, you know, either migrate from, spraying pesticides and herbs, whatever,
Yeah.
but wanted to do birds. I'd spent a lot of years helping guys do that. And many of them weren't salespeople like you and I.
Yeah.
So they would say, well, how do I do it? I don't like people. I don't feel comfortable talking to people. What do I do? You know,
Yeah.
I'm good at bird work,
Yeah.
but I'm terrible at that stuff. And I said, you know what? You don't. Usually my response was something like, do you have a business card? Sure. One of the easiest ways to spot a bird problem is just by looking up or looking down.
Yeah.
So over the years, me and my whole family were kind of trained. We were on family vacations or whatever.
Yeah.
My son would say, Dad, hey, look, check out that bird problem. So cool. So all I would do is I'm like, hey, it's a good time to get a Slurpee or whatever it is. So we'd pull into the convenience store, and I would just walk in and real quick just say, hey, here's my card. I noticed you got a bunch of birds out there. If you want to do something about it, give me a call.
Yeah.
That's it. Soft sell.
So do constantly be looking for those type of opportunities. But let's talk about what did happen with your job flow coming in. Like where did first of all, where did most of those jobs come from? You talked about getting out there old school and networking at events. Do you know, was there like a 10% follow-through rate on a lot of those leads? Was it 20%? Did you even track percentages?
I didn't.
Okay.
But I think, the easiest thing for me to do, and I think for anybody really, is to identify one person that can help you.
Yeah.
And if it's a pest control technician, he may know somebody, even a family, it could be
That's
anybody.
It. Yeah, right.
For me, it happened to be my son-in-law who was working for a property manager. And, I asked him about it and told him what I was doing. And, through his network, it just started happening really organically. All of a sudden I'd get calls, and again, it took about 6 months to grow that.
Yeah.
But then they started coming in. I mean, very little effort. I just identified a guy.
Yep.
Hoping he could help me. Told him, shared with him what I was going to do, and it really took off from there.
Okay, now with those leads, and they're taking off from there, let me ask this. What percentage of those did you have to go out in person in order to close, or was it all of those, or did you get the opportunity where you could kind of get photos from the customer, finesse it a little bit, and then they say, yeah, let's do it. It's going to be $3,000 to do this install. Let's do it.
It's hard to say, because as just a single owner operator,
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of time and resources. So I always looked for the low-hanging fruit. I didn't spend a lot of time on the other stuff. So it's kind of hard to say. I really didn't keep track of that. But if there was a need for a job that was ready to go right now, that's where the focus went.
Right. There was a hot one. They're a priority. So you get yourself out there. And then when you would go out there on a hot one, would you generally find it that you would close it pretty much on the spot, or they always needed some sort of bounce back where, okay, let me come back to you tomorrow or the next day? What was that process?
Bird control is kind of interesting. It's the sales cycle can be pretty long. It's different than, again, we'll say pest control, right?
Yeah.
Somebody has an ant problem, you can see the ants.
Yeah.
And you know you've got to take care of it.
Right.
So you call a guy and it's instantaneous, right? The sales cycle for that ant job.
Right.
A bird job, as you know, can take some time.
Yeah.
And part of the success that I did have was being able to manage those.
Yeah.
To answer your question, I would say 100% of the hot leads, the hot projects that I was afforded, I closed.
Right.
So I could identify, and it just takes practice, right?
Yeah, you have an instinct for it from
Yeah.
being exposed to it
Yeah,
over
yeah.
the years. One of the things that you mentioned, I don't want to pass up this point, but when you talked about like your son-in-law, you talked about some key people. This is an example in a book. There's a book by Malcolm Gladwell called Tipping Point, where he talks about the importance of understanding influencers. Now, when we say influencers now, we think about social media,
Right.
but this book was written before that term really took off, but it was actually rooted in some of his philosophies about how networking is really about talking to people who can network, rather than just like one source. So, like if you, for example, you probably did network with some of your key pest control companies that maybe you could do sub work for. Did you do some
Absolutely,
of that?
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
so in other words, instead of talking to one customer, you talk to customers that could potentially be exposed to multiple customers. And then to take it even a step further, there's some sort of incentive for that person to kind of put your name out there. Now, it's not always that they need to get a percentage or something like that. A lot of times, what you'll be surprised, and this is one of the lessons I think that come from your business experience, is that when you have helped people over the years, and you build up this rapport, it becomes a win-win. And whenever there's a win-win, the people on the other side of that formula are more than happy to continue with a win-win. And for them, they don't mind helping you because they know over the years before you've had to help them, and therefore just the generosity that people have is often overlooked.
100%.
Especially when you are good at what you do, you have integrity, you have a reputation of doing things the right way. Actually, you're in a minority these days when you have those qualities. I hate to say it,
Yeah, you're right.
but when you're willing to give bad news because it's truth, that's the type of thing that customers, they hold on to.
Mm-hmm.
They know people that are straight shooters, and they can continue to work with you. They'll give you a lot of opportunities. So networking, so that you get all these leads, and then hot ones are now coming your way, and they're when you get like a hot one and it converts, you say 100%. Here's another key question: do you offer terms? They ask for terms. Do you get a 50% deposit? Like these are critical things.
They're really important.
Yeah, right.
And not to cut you off, but you're pointing out all of my weaknesses, all of my failures right away.
This is loaded with lessons.
Yeah.
That's what
Totally,
it's about,
100%.
right?
But trying to do everything on my own was one. Undervaluing my service was one.
Yeah, that's a big thing. When you're good at this, you tend to you should charge for it, because and guys that are really good at this often think, well, the customer's not going to pay them. Yeah, they will if you're good at what you do. They need your service, and they need you to do it right.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people that do it wrong for cheap money. They've passed that, especially some of the best companies do bird control. The most common thing is they don't value.
Correct.
And you being loaded with 30 years, I mean, you were going to be at the top shelf in terms of quality that you're bringing to their lives. So, but you would you not get a deposit, at least a 50% deposit? How did you buy your materials if you aren't getting deposits? And
So
cash flow is incredibly important.
Yeah, credit cards are awesome. Cash is awesome.
Yeah.
right? So, and then terms from some of the larger jobs, that's where I kind of ran into trouble.
I see.
And another kind of one of my non-strengths, if you will. You know, I did very well. I invoiced for those 3 years, every month, every year. It was crazy looking at the books. It was pretty crazy, the dollar amount of revenue. Now, when I dug a little deeper and looked at profit margin, then that's where, looking back, like, man, I should have charged more.
Yeah.
I was worth more.
Yeah.
The work I did was valuable. I should have charged more. So my profit margins, I should have paid more attention to that. And then the other thing was collections. So the guys that I did give terms to, you know, I don't mind sharing that I probably left maybe $30,000 of uncollected revenue.
That's a big
I mean,
chunk of
I
money.
just never saw it.
Right.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So, when you would get things going with the job itself, you would have to basically go out and buy the material out of pocket. Did you ever have customers that, you know, they had approved, you got started, and then the job got canceled and you were out money that way? Because that's
Yeah, I
always
got to experience that and a whole lot more.
man, see.
And that stuff does happen. And I think as a manufacturer, as a sales guy at, you know, one of the bird control companies, unless you've spent a lot of time, like years even, out in the field and doing it, I mean, you can't really appreciate. I mean, you can mentally, you can know because you talk to the guys and you hear their pain.
Yeah.
But until you actually think, you know, experience it, jobs canceling, running out of money. I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons why customers do that.
Right. Yeah.
But you know, there are many other things. You know, lift rentals not showing up on time, broken lifts, your bird control product supplier not having product. All these things. And if all these things happen when you're on a job, I know we're getting into the technical install service side of it, but those can be devastating.
Yeah.
You know, as a owner operator, you know, if I miss a day,
Yeah.
that's big.
Yeah, I mean, we have that happen where guys aren't prepared and they're out on site in hotels, and it's like to add a whole nother day of cost while you're sitting dead in the water. Oh,
Yeah.
So we you know, really try to be careful when we're you know, looking at projects and we find out that they're going to be on site. We make sure that we're, you know, all hands on deck for some kind of emergency with them, but it's amazing how little planning sometimes goes into the actual execution until you get up around the bigger players who know better. And so they're always prepared, you know, over-prepared, redundancies of things in place.
Right.
So you would probably, if you could go back on that one, you would try to charge more and then also possibly get deposit checks in advance. The thing that I like about deposit checks is that it's the final solidification of the deal. Like it absolutely shows that the customer is 100%. And what I like about that format, 50% deposit up front, allows you to then go buy material where it's really not out of pocket. You've covered your costs at least for material. And then you go out, you execute the job with the understanding that that day there's a check ready when you finish that job, and now you cover all your hard costs, and now you have profit left over at the end of that, and then a certain amount of that goes into a fund that's considered your cash flow. And then you can actually pay yourself, you know, portions, and you have that discipline. But do you think that was a mistake, not getting deposit checks?
Yeah. So, and I tried, and sometimes they just said, well,
As a deal breaker.
gosh, we just don't do it.
Yeah, that's not their policy.
And as a guy just starting out, you know, fear held me back from doing a lot of things that I should have, you know, looking back, I should have known better. Just don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Just, you know.
Yeah.
So, I should have not been afraid to walk away.
Yeah.
I just said, okay, that's
Yeah.
fine, thanks, you know.
Yeah, sometimes it's the best choice on a deal is no deal. Sometimes that's
Well,
a
part
good
of that
option.
30,000 debt I talked about
Yeah.
earlier, I mean, that was,
Yeah,
that
so
was Yeah.
Yeah, that can be really frustrating. So now let's talk about the execution, though. Here you are, you got jobs, you got maybe you did get a deposit, or you got to go. Now you're out there doing this stuff by yourself. You have like you had some people that you could call up and say, hey, I need help with an install, and you're going to get X amount of money on this job. Or
Yeah.
you at least had some subs.
So I was talking to a friend customer yesterday about this, and she shared with me that she just gave her one employee a raise. She was super excited about it. She was doing it right. You know, I was the guy that, no, I'm going to do it myself.
Try to keep
I'm a perfectionist.
yeah.
I'm going to make it happen. But what she shared with me is that she had a good employee. She recognized his value, and she paid him for it. She rewarded him for it, which was awesome.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't want to be up on ladders anymore. I don't want to be. So, you know, it's looking back. The first thing I would have done before anything was found somebody that could actually do the installation.
Yeah, so that you could continue doing your most important value to the business, which is to continue selling or possibly working on getting more deposits, looking at your pricing structure, raising your prices, and keeping things nice and profitable so that you had long-term growth from the profits.
Yeah,
right?
100%. And
is that what you would have focused on? Let's say you had a good sub. He was reasonable, reliable. He's not asking for the sun and moon. Actually, one of those people that doesn't really like to work a lot of people. He wants to do his own thing. Those are really good subs. And let's say you had one of those at the ready. Of course, he's working other jobs. He's a sub, so you're going to 1099 this guy at the end of the year, where whatever you pay him means that he has to account for his own taxes that he'll owe on that income, right? So you 1099, but let's say you had somebody like that. What would that have changed? You would have gotten to spend a little more time at home with the family, but most importantly, with that time, what would you have done for the business?
Yeah, so many things.
Okay.
I mean, you don't even think about it until you're actually presented with it.
Yep.
So there's the sales stuff, there's the marketing, there's the networking, there's just all these things.
Accounts receivable.
Accounts payable.
Yeah.
Sometimes not on purpose.
Yeah, they
but,
owe you $12,000. Maybe you get in a car and go over to their office and say, hey, listen, we've gone 30 days past. I got bills. I mean, can we get a check here? And showing up, maybe that could make a huge difference. Sometimes you have to do that sort of thing if they're not answering calls.
Right.
Can it, right?
So, but there's little things that you don't think about, like equipment maintenance. Coordinating delivery of, again, lifts. Product acquisition, looking for new product suppliers, reaching out to manufacturers for, help for, leads or whatever it may. There's all these things.
Keeping that sub running efficiently is this whole peripheral part of the business you have to do to keep him going like a fine old machine. You got to make sure his lifts are there, all the tools are good, the supplies are there.
His training.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing.
There's a lot of guys that come from. I did identify some guys who were window washers or, handymen who were capable, competent people, but they just didn't know anything about birds. So there's training, there's safety stuff you got to think about.
Yeah, there's a lot to consider before diving into it. Now, once you had all these jobs and they were going, what percentage of them were you actually the only person doing the install on?
90%.
Oh, so there's right there. So there's a big lesson learned. I mean, sure, and the quality of work was probably really good. Did you ever get injured while you're out there? You probably were exposed to some, I mean, at the very least, you drew blood sometime. I mean, just poking your finger with cable, there's all kinds of ways you can injure yourself if you're not careful. Most importantly, when you're up high.
Yeah.
So you always were good about tying off and following safety yourself.
So but you're inevitably you get it. I mean,
you get home, I mean, and you got backaches, you're limping around, and
Well, especially for an old man, right? I mean, it's hard.
you're not that old, but still,
but it's-
yeah,
it's-
I'm amazed. Like even guys in their late 40s or 50s that can't go up on ladders and can't go up on roofs.
Yeah.
It's physically demanding
Yeah.
job for any age. But yeah, it's not a young man's game. On top of it, yet you're doing the most heavy manual part of it, which is the actual install.
The thing I recognize is that, and they always talk about it, is that as you get older, it's the recovery
Yeah.
that isn't like it used to be.
Yeah.
So you tweak your back, or you miss the bottom run on the ladder and you mess up your ankle a little bit. You just don't recover.
Yeah.
And what that means is that tomorrow is hard.
Yeah.
And then by the end of that week,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's amazing, like repeating movements in bird control, where you go up and down ladders. Well, you go up and down ladder, you might do it, 78 times on a job site in a given day. And now going up and down that ladder is going to take you 30% longer. So it's like going up and down the same amount of time. Now you need 100, like the same time it would be to go up and down 100 times. It all adds up. And conversely, when you have efficiency of install where your movements are well thought out and every second of it is really efficient, then you can do jobs faster and more easily in terms of the productivity of the job. Now that part of it, you probably had an advantage versus people getting new to bird work. Like a lot about like the install process, how to divide and conquer, but a lot of the times, 90% you were solo up there. Did the jobs generally turn out good and the customers were always happy? Did you have any job where just the end result,
Yeah.
the customer was like, sorry, I'm not paying you, this did not work?
No.
None of that, right?
and that was one of the things I think I was able to do really well.
That's the good
is,
thing.
You know, is that I could make sure that when I left the job,
That's
product was installed properly, it was cleaned up properly, this job site was cleaned up properly.
Yeah.
So I could control all that stuff.
I would have to say that one factor is probably what sustained you more than anything.
Yeah.
Because without that, you are truly going down.
I'd agree with that.
If you cannot execute the jobs properly, and it's amazing, the efficacy of, getting every job right is not as common. That's the sad truth about bird control. Even the best in the business still have like 5% failure situations where they have to go back, and some of them even accepted in some of the big pest control companies, a 70% of the time they won't have a callback. I'm like, well, 30% of the time you have to go back to the job
Yeah.
site. There's part of your profit right there, the labor costs. For them, they have insurance and all those employees to go back. It's really important to button everything up and really know what you're doing before you leave that site. And especially one thing that's overlooked is the walk around. Did you walk around with each client before you left and say, hey, here it is, any questions? Or was it generally they trusted you, you finished, they would just, you were
No,
done?
I found that you have to be really pretty specific
Yeah.
on the initial. Say, this is what I'm going to do.
Yep.
Maybe have a picture and say, this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
This is what we'll do. This is how much it's going to cost.
Set
But-
expectations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but all that said, you could think it's perfect, and you've done your walkthrough, and you go home,
Yeah.
and you get a call the next day.
Yeah.
And something happened.
Right.
You missed a hole in the net.
Right. That can happen.
It happens.
Bird got up in the net, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But-
So it's how you respond to that.
Yeah.
Will really help establish your relationship
Yeah.
with the customer and your just your reputation in the industry.
How much, when you would go, you tell a customer, hey, I'm going to do this, this is what's going to look like, and then a big thing that I find is important is to set expectations of what the birds are really going to do when you're finished. There are so many times where people net off a big structure, and it's a great job. They've netted off the warehouse. But now you have hundreds of displaced resident birds that are still flying around the facility. And the customer comes back and they say, well, they're definitely out of there, but I didn't think, are they all going to be around here for the next several weeks? It's really important to let them know, yes, when we net this off, they're going to be displaced, and within 30 to 60 days, things calm down and go back to normal. How much of that were you able to offer, or was that really not necessary?
No, that's another thing that took a lot of my time, because I just didn't install product for. Some people do that, and that's okay.
Yeah, they just install, gone, go and do it, and they don't care.
But I've been on the bad end of that.
Yeah.
So my goal was always to educate my customer, just like you said.
Yeah.
We're going to do this, but this will happen.
Yeah.
Or we're going to do this, and then this will happen. So
that they have proper expectations.
So educating them sometimes took, that was part of the sales cycle.
Well, I always say selling and bird control is educating.
Yeah.
It's consulting and educating.
I'd agree with that.
It's really not like you're going to pull out some magic sales skill. It's about, hey, so look, in my best opinion, this is what needs to happen to solve this problem.
Yeah.
So let's conclude now. Let's conclude with at least, this has been great, by the way.
It's a lot of fun.
What I like is that there's no hiding of anything, your experience. You're being real raw and open, which is so much more valuable than trying to put some spin on the things that you failed with, because inside every failure is a seed of opportunity.
Yeah.
Now, let's think of the seeds that are being planted in other people now who are jumping in, and they're like, oh, I watched this thing, and Scott Swanson, Bird Barrier, talked about his business. Man, I'm not going to make this mistake. Mm-hmm. You could be, this could be incredibly helpful. It's been helpful just for me alone, kind of hearing it from this viewpoint. But let me ask you, the most important mistakes that you think you made that you could learn from. What's the number one piece of advice that you would offer from your experience?
Yeah, so I've often thought about that.
In retrospect, hindsight's 20/20.
Because had I done some of the things, who knows? I might have still been doing that, and I might have had 3 or 4 guys working with me. My employees. So I sometimes think about that. But I would say, first of all, I'm grateful for the way it did work out.
Yeah.
Because I think this is just the environment that I belong in. It's just.
You mean where you are now with Bird Barrier?
Where I am now. It feels like home. But I think that was great for that time. But I think my biggest failure was not asking for help. I was
from who?
Everybody. So so it was
going all directions.
So it was pride, right? I thought, hey, I've been in this business for 30 years. I can do it. Right. I've seen it all. I know it all. I can do it.
Right.
So I think not asking for help. So with marketing, not asking for, I don't have any money, but can you help me? And then when I make some money, maybe, I can give you, there's a lot of things you can do. And I've found generally that if you ask for help from people, oftentimes they're willing to help you.
Yeah.
So it would have been not going it alone. It would have been in all aspects, marketing, sales, installation. If I had to say number one, it would have been paying a guy to go up and down the ladders, up and down the lifts, and actually do the work.
Right.
Before anything else.
Right.
Before I started, I would have identified that guy. And that, again, I was talking to the same friend customer yesterday. When she told me that, I said, it's interesting, Sarah, that you're sharing this with me, because if I had to say one thing, that would have been it. As a 50-something-year-old guy, it's hard getting up and down and doing this work. It can be physically demanding. I would have got some installation help somehow.
Okay, so one thing that I've observed over the years, especially doing certification classes, and then getting to watch the sprout up of a brand new company like yours. I've seen a lot of these. And the one thing that I noticed, and I don't know the statistics on this one for bird control, but I would say that probably the most successful ones that I've seen are partnerships, where not just one guy decides to go out and do it on his own, but one of his coworkers or somebody that he's talked to over the years that he trusts, like really feels comfortable around this other guy, and they say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking of starting a business. Would you want to partner up? And then when you have two in this world of bird control, at the very least, starting off with two, now you have two people, you're going to get less overall cut of whatever the profits are, but in the end, those are the ones that seem to make it past year 3 into profitability. And I've been doing this for nearly 10 years, and there are a lot of companies that are now in their 7th year, 6th year, 5th year, doing really well. There are exceptions. There's one guy up in Salt Lake City who jumped in and did it all himself, and amazing. But what the key thing about his business was this. He was really good people person, really good at sales, and he definitely delegated off all of the work to other people as far as execution. That way he was able to keep things running. And it's usually a partnership when you have, like, the best formula that I've seen is you got someone like yourself that's a people person, but also a lot of good experience and very business savvy too. Not just a people person, like without the sustenance. And then the person he works with lacks all those skills, but is very good at working mechanically, like not really great with people. Every once in a while, you'll find somebody who's good at all of it. It's rare. And when you find one of those, they usually are the best. They run the best bird control companies because they understand all facets of the business, and they're good at it.
What that may do too is if you get a partner, or that's not necessarily in the bird world, but has, because there's a lot of add-on businesses in bird control,
right,
that you can offer to customers.
That's true.
So there are definitely benefits, I think, with partnerships. I think partnerships, you've got to be careful too, though. Yeah. Because I've heard stories it didn't end well.
You have to have complete trust. It has to be. It has to be someone really special, and it's kind of like you've known for a long time,
right,
and you've talked about it together, and the two of you together seem to be a good combination.
Yeah.
And it's hard to find, but you don't have to have this business partnership in order to have other people involved. I think the lesson is there that you're going to need a team to be successful in your bird control business, 100%. No matter what. So how you go about building that team, at least 2 or 3 people, key players, are all going to be part of the success in the end.
Yeah, and your supplier can be part of your team.
That's true. Yeah. I feel like that. I feel like the guy I talked about in Salt Lake, he openly admits, like, I've been a critical business partner, even though I have no ownership stake in any way. What I get in return is his business, where he buys everything religiously from our company. He wouldn't think of buying from anyone else because I helped him in the earliest stages build his business from the ground up. It's really challenging. Well, I think we covered it. Is there anything else any other insight that you can offer? Like, what would you tell somebody now out there who's getting ready to start their own business? Maybe just have them lean on you.
Well, that's
I would direct people to you now, actually, if they're starting a business.
That would be my suggestion. And it doesn't have to be me. I mean, it just ask for help.
Yeah.
If you can honestly look at yourself and say, I'm not super great at this. I'm really good at this, but I'm not good at, ask for help from somebody who is good. Yeah. Even if it's a tax guy. Taxes killed me. I mean, I don't,
Oh, yeah.
I had to pay a lot of taxes, and it's something you don't think about. So, or a materials guy or an advertiser, ask for help.
Yeah.
That's what the number one thing that I'd recommend.
Well, man, I've really gotten a lot out of this myself. This is really good. So, well, there you have it. Straight from someone who went out, ventured on his own for 3 years, and a lot of good wisdom, good nuggets in there. We will continue on. We've got more podcasts coming on the Modern Bird Control podcast this year, 2025. If there are subjects that you think we should cover, let us know. You'll see there are ways to contact us through through these networks where you see these broadcasts being streamed. So we look forward to helping you out. I think that's it. Again, my name is Michael Gallion. This is Scott Swanson.
Been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. That was great.
All right.
Thanks.
We'll
Yeah.
see you guys soon.
Yep.